Imagine this just for a second. American military officers, they're standing there watching a Russian-Belarusian war game. You've got tanks firing, helicopters strafing. I mean, really picture it. Because that actually happened just days ago, September 15th, 2025. It's almost unbelievable when you think about everything else going on.
It really is. And what's truly astonishing, really, is that this wasn't, some historical reenactment or something out of a spy thriller.
Hey.
This was happening just as NATO forces were, and this is the key bit, for the very first time in history, actively shooting down Russian drones over Poland.
Wow.
We're talking about aerial combat, essentially, pushing us, closer to open conflict with Russia than we've been since World War II. It's such a stark contradiction, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and it demands we look closer.
It really does.
So you've shared this really fascinating stack of sources with us, covering all these angles. And today we're going to unpack these events. We'll look at the Zapad 2025 war games, this unprecedented Polish drone crisis, the Trump administration's, dramatic shift in relations with Belarus.
Which is a whole story in itself.
Oh, definitely. And NATO's scramble to respond to all this. The idea is to connect these threads, which seem so separate at first glance, and try to figure out what they actually mean. For global stability, for alliances.
Exactly. We'll explore the strategies behind the scenes, the really dangerous paradoxes that are popping up, and the implications. Because what we're seeing is a Western response that looks, frankly, fractured, right when unity seems most critical. So hopefully we can connect some dots here, maybe uncover a few aha moments for you listening, understand why these events are tangled together much more tightly than they might appear. Okay,
let's start with that scene. U.S. officers at Zapad 2025. It's just so visually striking, it pulls you right in.
It really does. And the sheer audacity of it is something else. You have uniformed American military officers present at the Borisovsky training ground in Belarus. The date, September 15th, 2025.
So just a few days ago.
Exactly. And picture the scene. Russian tanks maneuvering, firing main guns, attack helicopters overhead, all simulating a battle against, and this was explicitly stated, Western forces.
Against Western forces.
Yes. And right there, watching it all, are American personnel, observing. It's quite the image.
And it wasn't like they sneaked in. The sources say the Belarusian defense minister himself, Viktor Krinin, personally welcomed them. Rolled out the red carpet, basically.
That's right. He's quoted saying, "We will show whatever's of interest for you, whatever you want. You can go there and see, talk to people, an open invitation."
An open invitation to watch them practice fighting us, essentially.
Pretty much. It's deeply contradictory. On one hand, it looks like diplomatic engagement, maybe an attempt by Belarus to keep some lines open, but the context is undeniable.
And the U.S. officers. The sources mentioned they were pretty quiet. Shook hands, but no interviews for the media.
Right, that silence adds another layer. Were they just gathering intel? Trying to show diplomatic openness without endorsing it? Or does their very presence send a confusing message?
Confusing the allies, you mean? Allies who are dealing with the drone crisis at the same time.
Exactly. And confusing to Russia and Belarus, too. Does it signal division? Weakness? It's hard to say definitively what the strategic goal was from the U.S. side, just based on their presence and silence. But the implications are huge.
Okay, so let's look closer at the exercise itself. Zapad 2025. Zapad means West.
That's right. West 2025. The name itself is pointed. It ran September 13th to 16th.
And the scale. The sources mentioned 7,000 troops from Russia and Belarus.
Yeah, 7,000. Which is, interestingly, a massive scale down from Zapad 2021. Remember that one?
Vaguely, yes. Much bigger.
Oh, huge. Around 200,000 troops were involved in 2021, so 7,000 is a significant reduction.
Why the drop, do we think? Resources tied up in Ukraine.
That's certainly a major factor analysts point to. The war in Ukraine is draining resources. But even scaled down, the exercise locations are still significant. Not just Belarus, but also Russia's Kaliningrad exclave.
Right, that piece of land between Poland and Lithuania, always a flashpoint.
Exactly. And drills in the Baltic and Barents Seas, too. The scenario, as we said, explicitly defending against attack by Western forces. It even included simulated ballistic missile launches.
And the sources mention nuclear components.
Yes, that's a really concerning detail. Nuclear demonstrations. It wasn't just conventional stuff. And this comes right after Putin promised Belarus those advanced Oreshnik missiles.
Oreshnik. But those are the new hypersonic ones, right? Or medium range.
They're described as medium-range ballistic missiles, solid propellant, likely nuclear capable. So Putin promising those to Lukashenko and then having nuclear drills in Zapad. It's a very deliberate, very sharp message about escalation.
And the history of Zapad exercises is, it's not reassuring, is it? Zapad 2021 was basically cover for the Ukraine invasion buildup.
It absolutely was. The buildup was happening under the guise of those exercises. And that failed push towards Kyiv in early 2022, launched directly from Belarus.
So even though Zapad 2025 is smaller and maybe positioned deeper inside Belarus, away from the border this time.
Right. The sources note that shift in geography.
The scenario, the nuclear angle, the history, it all carries this heavy, alarming weight, especially if you're Ukraine or the Baltic states.
Absolutely. For them, it's not just an exercise, it's a potential rehearsal. The shift in scale might suggest less focus on immediate large-scale invasion, maybe more on strategic signaling, testing readiness, or just consolidating Belarus as a forward base. But the narrative remains deeply hostile.
And who else was watching besides the U.S.? The sources list quite a few international observers.
Yeah, this is another fascinating angle. 23 countries in total. And it's a mixed bag. You have NATO members there, the U.S., Turkey, Hungary.
Hungary, okay. That fits a pattern, perhaps?
Perhaps. But also non-aligned countries, Serbia, some Central Asian republics. It's a diverse group.
What does that tell us? Why would NATO members, besides the U.S., attend an exercise simulating defense against, NATO?
It complicates things, doesn't it? It suggests maybe not everyone in NATO is on the exact same page regarding engagement versus isolation. Or perhaps it's just intelligence gathering for them, too.
Yeah.
But it certainly provides a degree of, let's say, international observation, maybe even a thin veneer of legitimacy from Moscow's perspective that they probably welcome.
It does point to some interesting internal NATO dynamics. But, okay, while this very strange observation mission is happening in Belarus just days before, NATO is facing something completely different on its eastern edge. Let's pivot to the Polish drone crisis.
Right. This is where things shift dramatically from observing simulated conflict to engaging in actual kinetic action.
Talk us through the timeline. When did this happen?
It started late on September 9th. Around 11:30 p.m., Russian drones began entering Polish airspace.
At night?
Yes. And it wasn't just one or two stray drones. This was a sustained event, lasting from around midnight until 6:30 a.m. on September 10th. Sources estimate between 19 and 23 drones were involved in total.
19 to 23, that sounds coordinated.
It does. And significantly, many of them reportedly entered Poland from Belarus.
Belarus. Okay, the connection is direct.
Very direct. And here's the headline fact, the really crucial point. This was the first time NATO forces had engaged Russian military assets since the full-scale Ukraine invasion began in 2022.
The first time since the war started.
And more than that, it was the first combat engagement with Russian forces ever for NATO as an alliance.
Ever? That's huge. That's a historical threshold being crossed.
It absolutely is. A watershed moment. Imagine, waking up to that news, an all-night aerial battle involving Russian drones over a NATO country. It takes the conflict right to the alliance's doorstep in a way that hasn't happened before.
So how did NATO respond? Was it quick?
Immediate and robust. The operation was quickly named Eastern Sentry. Polish F-16s scrambled. But critically, Dutch F-35s, the advanced stealth fighters, were deployed and are credited with shooting down most of the drones.
The F-35s. Okay.
You also had Italian AWACS surveillance planes coordinating things, German Patriot missile systems engaging targets, and even Belgian tankers and NATO refueling aircraft supporting the operation. It was a multinational rapid response.
A serious show of force and coordination.
Oh!
What were the results? Did they get them all?
They confirmed 4 drones shot down. But, intriguingly, they found debris from drones at 16 different sites across Poland.
16. So more were hit or crashed than just the 4 confirmed kills.
It seems likely. Or perhaps some were designed to break apart or self-destruct. The picture isn't totally clear, but 16 debris sites suggest a much wider impact area. And tragically, one drone actually struck a residential building.
Oh, no. Where was this? Were people hurt?
In a small town called WWII. Miraculously, incredibly luckily, no one was killed.
Wow. That's just sheer luck. Could have been catastrophic.
Absolutely. A single casualty could have dramatically escalated the entire situation. Whether hitting the building was intentional, poor targeting, or a malfunction, we don't know for sure. The drones identified were mostly Orlan 10s, typically for recon, but they can carry small payloads. It could have been a less precise saturation attempt or just bad luck, but the fact it happened is the critical escalation.
And Poland's reaction. predictably strong, I assume?
Very strong. Prime Minister Donald Tusk made that powerful statement you hear being quoted everywhere. This situation brings us the closest we have been to open conflict since World War II.
That really lands the gravity of it.
It does. And crucially, Poland invoked NATO Article 4.
Article 4. Explain what that means exactly. It's not Article 5, right?
Correct. Article 5 is the attack on one is an attack on all mutual defense clause. Article 4 is different. It allows any NATO member to request consultations with the other allies when they feel their territorial integrity, political independence, or security is threatened.
So it's a formal alarm bell.
Precisely. It signals a grave threat perception and triggers high-level discussions within NATO about how to respond collectively. And it's rare. This is only the 8th time Article 4 has ever been invoked in NATO's history.
Only the 8th time. That puts it in perspective. When was the last time?
It was actually invoked by 8 Eastern European states, including Poland, right after Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. So there's a clear pattern of its use linked to major Russian aggression in the region.
And Poland did more than just Article 4, didn't they?
Yes, they took immediate national actions. On September 11th, the day after the main drone incident concluded, they closed their border with Belarus, completely shut it down.
Wow, that's a huge step.
Huge economic and political signal. And they imposed major air traffic restrictions in their airspace, effective through December 9th. These are serious defensive measures reflecting a nation feeling under direct threat.
Okay, so NATO is in its first ever combat engagement with Russian forces. Poland invokes Article 4, closes borders. The tension is incredibly high.
Yeah.
And yet, at the same time, we have this other track, the Trump administration's Belarus gambit.
This is where the story takes that really sharp, almost dizzying turn into strategic contradiction. Because, yes, concurrently with all this, literally on September 11th, as Poland is reacting to the drone attacks, this unprecedented U.S.-Belarus deal unfolds.
The prisoner release deal.
Exactly. 52 political prisoners were freed by Lukashenko's regime. The sources give a breakdown. Among them were 14 foreign nationals, 6 Lithuanians, 2 Latvians, 2 Poles, 2 Germans, 1 French, 1 British citizen.
So citizens of NATO and EU countries held by Belarus.
Correct. And also prominent Belarusian figures like the journalist Ihar Losik and the opposition leader Mykola Staktovich, both held on charges widely seen as politically motivated.
Now, freeing political prisoners sounds good on the surface, but the context is vital. How many are still locked up in Belarus?
That's the crucial counterpoint. Our sources are clear. Despite this release, over 1,300 political prisoners remain detained in Belarus. So 52 freed is significant for those individuals, but it barely scratches the surface of the systemic repression.
So is it a real change of heart from Lukashenko or just a transaction?
The evidence points overwhelmingly towards a transaction, especially when you see the U.S. concessions involved.
What did the U.S. give up?
Quite a bit, according to the reports. Sanctions were lifted on Belavia, the state airline. That's huge for them, allowing them to service their Boeing planes again and potentially resume more international flights.
A big economic carrot.
A very big one. Plus, there are plans being discussed to reopen the U.S. Embassy in Minsk, which has been mostly shuttered or operating minimally, and even talk of considering direct flights between the U.S. and Belarus again. These are major steps toward normalization.
And wasn't there some personal touch from Trump involved?
Yes, this is quite extraordinary. The sources mention a personal letter sent by Trump to Lukashenko, signed simply Donald, described as a rare act of personal friendship. And along with the letter, a gift of White House cufflink.
Cufflinks to Lukashenko, while his country is facilitating attacks on a NATO ally.
That's the jarring disconnect. This level of personal diplomacy and concession-making towards Putin's closest ally happening at the exact same time NATO is confronting aggression enabled by that ally. It's baffling to many observers.
Who was the envoy Trump sent? Someone named John Cole.
Yes, John Cole. He's described as a lawyer and political operative with ties to Trump, often working outside traditional diplomatic structures. He acted as Trump's personal representative, meeting Lukashenko for 5 hours on September 11th.
5 hours. That's a long meeting. What did they discuss?
Reports say Cole discussed Belarus, ending weaponization of illegal migration, that tactic Belarus used before, pushing migrants to the EU border. And Cole stated plainly that Trump wants to normalize ties and revive economic relationships.
And Lukashenko's response?
Publicly, he played the part. He thanked Trump, saying, "I want to thank your president for efforts toward peace." But again, this is the same Lukashenko hosting Zapad, allowing drone launches, and remaining Putin's staunchest ally.
He's thanking Trump for peace efforts, while hosting war games simulating attacks on the West.
It's an incredible display of, well, geopolitical juggling. Lukashenko seems to be masterfully playing both sides. He gets sanctions relief and diplomatic engagement from the U.S. side, potentially weakening Western resolve, while maintaining his crucial security and political ties to Moscow. He positions himself as useful, maybe even indispensable, to both sides in different ways.
But how can these two things possibly coexist? The NATO response and this U.S. détente attempt, it seems fundamentally incompatible.
That's the core question, isn't it? It creates this massive strategic contradiction that leaves allies confused and potentially undermines the entire Western stance.
Which brings us squarely to that clash, NATO's emergency military response versus Trump's very different signals. It feels like two different worlds operating at the same time.
It really does. On the NATO side, you have Operation Eastern Sentry kicking into high gear after the drone attack. Announced September 12th, described as flexible and agile.
What forces were involved in that specific deployment?
Denmark committed 2 F-16s and an anti-air frigate for the Baltic. France sent 3 Rafale jets. Germany deployed 4 Eurofighters.
Yeah.
The UK promised forces, details to follow. The mission was explicitly to provide a quick response capability against Russian air incursions.
So a clear military buildup and statement of readiness.
Absolutely. And NATO leadership was vocal. Secretary General Mark Rutte said Russia's recklessness is increasing and stressed the core NATO principle, what affects one ally affects us all. He called Russia's behavior absolutely reckless.
Strong words from the top. And other European leaders
Echoed that sentiment. Kaja Kallas from the EU called it the most serious airspace violation since war began. Germany flatly rejected Russia's accident claims, calling it deliberate. France, the UK, Canada all issued strong condemnations. It sounds like a unified chorus of alarm and resolve, right?
It does. Until you factor in the other side of the equation.
Exactly. Because then you look at Trump's actions and statements. The warm personal diplomacy with Lukashenko, the sanctions relief for Belarus, the prisoner exchange, the talk of reopening the embassy, even calling Lukashenko a very respected man, strong leader.
Which is starkly different from how most Western leaders view him.
To say the least. And then his reaction to the actual drone crisis, the one that prompted the Article 4 invocation and the military mobilization by allies.
What was his specific reaction again?
It was incredibly muted, just a vague post on Truth Social. What's with Russia violating Poland's airspace with drones? Here we go. No strong condemnation, no ringing endorsement of NATO solidarity, no clear support for Poland, just that.
Here we go. That's it. For the first ever NATO combat engagement with Russia.
That appears to be the extent of the public reaction cited in our sources. It's a remarkable, almost jarring understatement compared to the gravity felt elsewhere in the alliance.
So you've got NATO allies putting pilots and planes in harm's way, invoking historic security clauses, condemning Russia, and a major U.S. political figure offering olive branches to Russia's closest partner while downplaying the attack itself.
It's just a fundamental breakdown in coordination, maybe even a deliberate divergence in strategy. Is Trump trying to undermine NATO's approach, thinking he can achieve more through personal deals? Or is he genuinely pursuing a separate path he believes is better? We don't know the motive for sure, but the effect is division.
It sends a terrible signal, doesn't it? If you're Putin, you must be watching this, thinking the West can't even agree on how to respond to a direct attack on one of its members.
It certainly risks being interpreted that way. It raises serious questions about the coherence and reliability of the alliance if U.S. policy, or potential future U.S. policy, is so dramatically out of sync with the collective actions and concerns of its core European allies. It's hard to maintain deterrence when you're sending such profoundly mixed messages.
And Russia's official line through all this, what are they saying?
Oh, the usual playbook. The Defense Ministry claimed no targets on Polish territory planned, trying the denial accident route for the drones. Kremlin spokesman Peskov accused the EU and NATO of blaming Russia daily without arguments and insisted Zapad was not directed against third countries.
Standard denial and deflection.
But then Peskov also said, almost in the next breath, NATO is fighting with Russia, that is obvious.
So they deny specific actions, but embrace the broader conflict narrative when it suits them.
Precisely. It's contradictory, but strategically useful for them. Deny responsibility for specific escalations while framing the overall situation as a defensive struggle against an aggressive NATO.
So what's Putin's calculation here, do you think? What's the goal of testing NATO like this, using Belarus, exploiting the Trump angle?
It looks multifaceted. 1, test NATO's response time, capabilities, and crucially, its unity. 2, actively create and exploit divisions, using Belarus as a wedge and leveraging any perceived ambiguity or divergence in U.S. policy. 3, try to normalize these kinds of aggressive actions, make drone incursions seem like minor incidents, not major escalations. 4, its gradual escalation, push the boundaries, probe for weaknesses, see how far they can go without triggering a massive, unified response, aiming ultimately to expand influence and destabilize the Western alliance.
A dangerous game of probing and pushing. Okay, let's circle back specifically to Belarus itself. This dual role they're playing is just fascinating. Supporting Russia to the hilt, yet simultaneously trying to engage the West. How do they manage that?
It's a masterclass in cynical opportunism, really. Look at the pro-Russia side. They allowed the 2022 invasion to launch from their soil. That's undeniable complicity. They're hosting Zapad 2025 with its anti-Western scenario and nuclear drills. Putin's promising them Russian missiles, integrating them deeper into Russia's military structure, intelligence sharing, supply routes for the Ukraine war. It's all ongoing. Belarus is a critical rear base and enabler for Russia.
No question about their alignment there. Deeply embedded with Russia.
Deeply. But then look at the other side of the ledger. Releasing those 52 political prisoners, a clear signal to the West, making noises about ending the weaponization of migration tactic they used before, and perhaps most audaciously, welcoming U.S. military observers to Zapad. Lukashenko is trying very hard to present himself as someone the West can, or perhaps needs to, talk to. A potential peace broker, even.
A peace broker who helps facilitate war.
That's the paradox. He's leveraging his very complicity with Russia as a reason for the West to engage him, perhaps hoping to moderate Moscow or at least provide a channel. But mostly it seems aimed at easing the pressure of Western sanctions and regaining some measure of international standing, all without fundamentally changing his allegiance to Putin. It's about regime survival and maximizing Belarus's wiggle room.
Is it sustainable? Can he keep playing both sides indefinitely?
It's incredibly risky. His fate is likely tied very closely to Putin's. But for now, he seems to be exploiting the divisions and uncertainties in the West, particularly the conflicting signals coming from different factions within the U.S. political landscape, to his advantage. He sees an opening and he's driving a wedge through it.
Let's quickly touch on the historical echoes here. We mentioned Zapad 2021 and its link to the invasion. That memory must hang heavy over these current events.
Immensely so. For Poland, the Baltics, and especially Ukraine, Zapad isn't just letters on a map, it's synonymous with the prelude to war. That's why even a scaled-down Zapad 2025 with nuclear drills triggers such alarm.
And the Article 4 invocation, only the 8th time ever, really underscores the severity of the drone crisis in historical terms.
Absolutely. It puts it on par with events like the immediate aftermath of 9/11, invoked by NATO itself, the Syrian civil war spillover into Turkey, and Russia's 2014 and 2022 aggressions against Ukraine. It's reserved for moments of perceived existential threat or severe instability.
What about Ukraine's reaction specifically to these September events?
They were deeply concerned, naturally. Their foreign ministry called Zapad an immediate threat that hinders peaceful efforts. President Zelensky labeled the drone incident an extremely dangerous precedent for Europe. He specifically noted reports that 8 of the drones seemed aimed toward Poland, suggesting deliberate targeting, not just accidental straying.
And he called for more proactive defense.
Yes, he reiterated his call for Western partners to use their air defenses to intercept Russian missiles and drones over Ukrainian airspace, precisely to prevent incidents like the Polish one from happening, arguing it's the only way to stop the conflict spilling over and directly threatening NATO.
And the Baltic states. How are they reacting?
High alert across the board. Lithuania is running its own parallel military exercises. Latvia has boosted border security. Estonia increased surveillance. They all see Zapad, combined with the drone incident and the ambiguous signals from the West, as deeply worrying signs, potentially foreshadowing wider conflict or further Russian probing. They are watching NATO unity, or lack thereof, very, very closely.
So the picture is one of acute anxiety all along NATO's eastern flank, heightened military readiness, but also this undercurrent of uncertainty caused by the mixed signals, especially regarding U.S. policy.
That sums it up well. A very tense, very unpredictable situation.
Okay, let's try to pull these threads together now. What are the big picture implications of everything we've discussed? What does this mean for NATO, for Putin, for the future?
Well, the most immediate and significant implication is for NATO unity. As we've discussed, the contrast between Trump's outreach to Belarus and the rest of NATO's mobilization against Russian actions reveals this this deep fissure.
Hmm.
It's not just a minor disagreement. It looks like a fundamental divergence on how to handle Russian aggression and its proxies.
And that division, you argue, weakens the alliance.
Critically so. How can you maintain collective defense? How can you credibly deter Putin if a major political force within your leading member state is actively courting Russia's closest ally and downplaying direct attacks on another member? It sends a message of disarray.
It raises that fundamental question. Can you simultaneously engage Lukashenko with personal diplomacy and concessions while militarily confronting the Russian aggression he facilitates?
It seems strategically incoherent at best. And Putin surely sees this. His objectives seem clear. Test NATO's resolve, physically and politically. Exploit any sign of division, especially between the U.S. and Europe, using figures like Trump or policies towards Belarus as wedges. He wants to normalize his aggressive behavior, making drone strikes seem like background noise rather than escalations, and continue that strategy of gradual escalation, push, probe, see what the reaction is, maybe push further next time. It's about eroding Western resolve and coherence over time.
It feels less like traditional diplomacy and more like a sustained campaign of disruption and testing boundaries.
Yeah.
A very high-stakes geopolitical game.
Extremely high stakes. And these events in September 2025 really highlight how fragile traditional alliances and diplomatic norms can become in this environment. Everything seems up for grabs. Everything is being tested.
Which leaves us, and you the listener, with a really difficult question, doesn't it? When an ally or a powerful faction within an ally takes such a radically different approach to a shared threat, how should the rest of the alliance respond? Is that divergence a legitimate, if risky, attempt at diplomacy? Or is it effectively undermining the collective security that the alliance was built for?
That's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? Finding the answer will likely shape the future of Western security cooperation for years to come.
So we end where we began, with this surreal image. U.S. officers watching Russian tanks practice attacking the West, while just over the border, other NATO forces are actively shooting down Russian drones launched from that same allied territory. It's more than just complex. It feels like the alliance is playing a dangerous game of chance with its own future.
Absolutely. When one part of the alliance is shaking hands at the adversary's war games, while another part is in direct kinetic conflict with that same adversary, well, the very meaning and strength of that alliance comes into fundamental question. The strategic coherence just isn't there in that picture.
Well, we hope exploring these interconnected events and the sources behind them has given you a clearer, maybe more nuanced perspective on this critical moment in global affairs. It's certainly given us a lot to think about.
Indeed.
If you found this discussion valuable and you happen to be listening on YouTube, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more analyses like this.
And if you're listening on Spotify, a follow would be great. It helps others find the content and ensures you won't miss our next exploration.
Until next time, thanks for tuning in, keep learning, and keep questioning.